I'm Christopher Owens with Coldwell Banker College Real Estate. As a full-time real estate agent, I walk through many properties, homes, and other buildings. And there are times when I see where someone has made a patch repair on the drywall. Now, many people are very good at what they do, while others, it jumps out and is very noticeable, and unfortunately not in a positive way. What I would like to do is help explain how to make a clean and precise drywall patch repair or tape a new wall and finish mudding it in so that not only are you happy with it, but maybe a potential buyer of your property would be. Or if you're going to buy a home and you know work needs to be done, but it's not big enough work to call in a full-time contractor, you can do this. Let me show you the way. The tools that I have in my drywall toolbox are these. You may not need all of them, but some of these will really help you on small repairs around the home. We have a 4-inch knife, a 6-inch knife, an 8-inch knife. I have a 10 and a 12-inch drywall knife. What you really need are the 4, the 6, and at least the 10. 12s are nice, not mandatory. You can usually do everything you need with a 10, but 12s are handy. 8, not so much for the average homeowner, not necessary. Then you have the drywall tape. This is the paper tape, which I think is superior to the mesh tape. Each his own. Use what you like. Then you have a sanding block for once it dries and you want to sand it down. Some people don't like all the dust, and drywall dust is very fine and it gets on everything. So a damp sponge works well if you're careful. It can be aggressive. You can take off too much of the joint compound after it dries with the damp sponge. So you just have to be careful when you do it. Also, I don't think that the texture is as clean as using a fine sanding pad. So you may want to go over it at the end with a sanding pad just to make it look smoother. Then we have our pan to put the mud in, and I mix my mud in the pan with water when necessary, so the consistency of the mud is correct. And then we have the joint compound, also known as the drywall mud. That's what the term we normally use. And this is what I use. You can get it local, pretty much anywhere. It all works well. The object of this presentation is to show you how to mud embed a drywall joint so that it is smooth and it blends into the body of the wall unnoticed, as it should be. Now, when you're working with factory drywall board, you have the ends, which are blunt and square, and then you have the factory edges on the long side. You may not see it in the video, but these factory edges have a bevel. This one bevels, and this on the bottom bevels as well. So that creates a recess that you can bed your piece of tape to. Now, what the drywall tape does is it connects the two boards together and it fills the gap. And applied correctly, it will be so smooth that no one should be able to notice it. So how thick should your drywall mud be? Well, on the wall, the mud should only be thick enough to bed the tape in, recess it into the groove, or flatten it against the blunt end, and then you will add coats over top that very thinly to eventually fill it up. You don't want this heavy. You do not want the mud to be put on so thick that it's very proud and sticks out. That's what catches eyes, and that causes a lot more work to get it smoothed down later. The mud that you put in your pan to work with should be smooth enough to apply easily, but not so thin to be like pancake batter where you try to put it on and it just runs down the wall. Now, mud straight out of the bucket is usually too thick. It can work, but it's thick and it's clumpy and it's more difficult to trowel on. So I always add a little water at a time, and stir it until the consistency is just right, that it applies smoothly, but it doesn't run down the wall. It may fall off of your knife as you're sliding it across, but that's okay. That can be cleaned up later. You want it to stick, hold firm, but smoothly trowel on. You may be asking, can I apply this one time and be done? No. Plain and simple answer is no. This is not a one and done operation. You have to put your mud on, put your tape in, bed it in, let that dry, come back, knock off the burrs, sand a little bit if necessary, and then put another coat. I'm telling you, it will take you probably 3 applications to get this done. But if this is in the house you're living in, put a coat on in the morning, go to work. Come back in the afternoon, it'll be dry. Put a fan on it while you're gone. That may help you. It'll be dry by then. Then knock off the big burrs and high spots and put another coat on. You'll have to put on at least 3 coats to make it look right. But again, you're not trying to put on heavy coats. You're trying to put on thin coats to cover and to spread out and feather your joint so that it is not noticeable. I'm ready to mix the drywall mud up. Now this is a container that I've used in the past, so it already has water inside on the top. So I'll start stirring it. As I stir this, I want to make a couple notes to you. When you put drywall back into a container like this and to use later, make sure you don't put any dry drywall back in there, and do not let it build up on the sides of your container, because that will dry, those pieces will, they'll fall into your fresh, good drywall mud, and then the joint compound will have little burrs, and every time you try to run a nice smooth bead across your wall, there'll be little scratches and hitchhikers. You don't want that. I have the consistency where I want it, smooth but not runny. And then I'll fill up my pan, have it ready to go. Now I've had people ask, what's that made of? How do you clean it up? Water. Don't even need soap, just water cleanup. It is predominantly baked limestone that's been crushed with a few other ingredients to make a nice, smooth, creamy joint compound. The dust you would not want to breathe because it's hard on your lungs. But the mud, it's pretty benign, and it just cleans up very simple with water. At this stage, we're ready to apply the drywall mud on the joint and bed the tape into the joint to help cover it over. Also, we'll patch a couple of these screw holes up here and show you how that works as well. Because drywall mud is full of water, it needs time to fully dry before you put the next application on. So you have to keep that in mind. It will take more than one time to get this job done correctly. I'm using the 4-inch knife. Fill in the joint. I could use the 6-inch knife for this as well, but this would be fine. You can see I'm layering it up pretty thick, but I will be applying pressure once I put the tape on and pressing out the excess drywall mud. I don't need all that when it's all said and done. Here's the tape. Now the tape is mudded. If you were a professional drywaller, you might go back over there and put a coat of tape or a coat of mud on top of the tape. And that would be perfectly fine. But I would say for the average homeowner, let this dry. I'm not done yet. Now I'm going to use the 6-inch knife to get off the excess. This way, when you come back later, you don't have to sand and knock off a whole bunch of high points. You can just go right to it. And try not to go over it too often. The more you work drywall joint compound, the drier it gets. And then if you do it too often, the tape won't stick. Right now, it's wet enough and it will adhere. We'll let this dry. Sometimes air bubbles will get behind the mud and the joint compound will not be fully free of voids. That's why I kind of go over it different ways. There we are. Now, because drywall joint compound shrinks, we'll have to go back over this another time at least, maybe 2 more times. But those will eventually be smooth and part of the wall, and you won't even notice them. Here. This particular wall, the drywall, taped the joint last night. It's dry this morning. Thankfully, he did a nice job, and there's not too much mud sticking up. But I'll take this 10-inch blade, and I'll run it down here to knock off any high points. Very well. Then up here, you can see the screw holes where the mud has shrunk, as it always does, and is indented into the wall. Now, this one sticks out proud, but it's still shrunk in the middle. There we go. I will put another coat of joint compound on the tape to help feather that out, and I'll fill these holes up a little bit again. You can see I'm spanning the joint much wider at this stage. I can come below, knock off the edges. This is a sloppy job. You'll get it all over you. I already have one myself. But as I said before, it cleans up with water, goes through the laundry with no problem. Is that good enough to paint yet? Absolutely not. It's going to take one more coat to do right. Now my drywall mud is starting to get a little dry, and you can see it's starting to catch there. So I need to put some water on it. But that smoothed out the tape line very well. We can lightly sand that next time we come back, lightly, and then put another coat. The next coat, we will overlap here and there, smooth it out. Our joint will be feathered well, and when this is primed and painted, you walk in here and it won't be noticeable. At this stage, this wall has been taped and bedded, and then we've had a second coat of drywall mud over top of the joint line. What I'll do today is I will lightly sand this just to get the high spots and the imperfections out, but it won't be done. I'll have a third coat. Quickly sanding it. That's all I need to do, because I have made sure that I did not put too much mud on. That's why I go over a joint 3 times. If you go over it less, you're usually putting more mud than you need to, then you have to sand more. And I can't stress to you enough how much you don't want to sand. The least amount of mud means the least amount of sanding, and that's what we're working for. The next step, I'll put the last coat on this joint. Last coat of mud will be put on, spread it out. That'll cover imperfections, feather it out, make it smooth, and then once that dries, a light sanding, it's ready to prime and then paint. Real estate inevitably means small patches and repairs need to be made. These jobs are not as hard as you may have thought they were. They just take time and patience to complete successfully. Are you preparing to sell your house in the near future and have a punch-out list you need to take care of? Or are you planning on purchasing a house with the intention of making these small repairs yourself and don't know where to start? Hopefully this video has given you the confidence and has inspired you to consider tackling these jobs on your own. I know you can do it. Feel free to contact me, and I'll be glad to talk to you about repairs, patches, or any other real estate matter. Thank you.